To what shall I compare God's reign of love? It's like this. A billionaire CEO was throwing a party. And I don't know if you've ever been to a billionaire CEO party, but they don't send out save the dates or invites. They just get everything ready, and then you, if you're on the special VIP list, get a text. Your phone dings and it just says, "Party's on." And with a location, with a little, pin in a map, and you go. And you have an amazing, incredible time. So this billionaire CEO was throwing a party, and he had everything ready. I mean, the bar was stocked. The buffet was ready. The music was pumping. The piñatas were full of stock certificates and bearer bonds. This party was going to be off the hook. And he sent his text to his VIP list. "Party's on." And then his phone started dinging. He was getting replies from people. You don't do that. You just show up. But one of them was like, "I'm sorry, but I've got a business deal that's going on. We're merging with another company, and I need to be at that, so I'm going to have to miss your party." And another one was like, "I've got this real estate thing going. We are closing today, and I've got to read that whole contract, so I'm not going to be able to make it." And somebody else was like, "It's my wedding today. It's weird that you decided to have a party, but I'm going to go to that instead." And the billionaire CEO gathered all of his servants and his staff and said, "No one's coming. So why don't you go out into the city and find anyone who you can and invite them to come?" And his servants and his staff did that. And then one of them came to him and was like, "Sir, we went out and we invited everyone we could find in the city, and well, there's still room. The dance floor is not full. No mosh pit has formed. And the buffet still has a bunch of food that's not getting eaten, and there are drinks going drinking. Anyway, they're still there." And the billionaire CEO said, "Go out to the countryside, go to the lanes and the fields, and compel people to come to this party. Grab them by the wrist and drag them here if you have to. We are not done until this house is full." And they did that. And the house got full, and the party was awesome. That's almost enough of a sermon right there. I mean, can you imagine such a thing? A God who is so hospitable, so welcoming, that they go out to city streets, to countryside lanes and fields, and don't just ask nicely, "If you want to come, would you please, if you don't mind," but compel people to come into not a boring worship service, but a party, a good time, a place where you can feel free and welcome and wonderful. That is God's reign of love. But I have to keep going. See, there's this important thing to remember about who we are and where we are. None of us are on the VIP list. None of us got that first text. None of us were quite the ones who the billionaire CEO thought the party was being planned for. But we're all here anyway. And I think that if the VIP list had shown up, we would still all be here anyway. God's house is big. God's estate is huge. It takes a lot of people to fill it up. It might even take everyone to fill it up. And God wasn't going to stop until that place was full. But we're not here because we're at the top of the list. We're not here because we're the cream of the crop. We're not here because we're very important people. We are here because God's welcome extends to everyone. And we are everyone. And so we can be thankful that we are here, that we worship a God who would welcome even us, even people who are not very important, or at least people who are not on the VIP list. And that's probably enough of a sermon right there, but I have to go on. Because this is our Sunday of extravagant welcome. This is our Sunday when we reaffirm that open and affirming covenant. When we say it again to remind ourselves of who we claim to be. It's a big covenant. It's a big statement that we seek to be a congregation that embraces differences of race, ethnicity, culture, faith, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity, marital and family status, age, and ability, and those are just the ones we listed. If we thought about it, if we brainstormed, we could probably think of a bunch of other categories of whom we seek to welcome all people. And the thing about those categories is their spectrums. I mean, we know that about things like sexual orientation and gender identity, but there are also a lot of family statuses. There are tons of socioeconomic statuses and nationalities. They come in all sorts of categories. It's not just welcoming one little group of people, but tons of different kinds of people. And every one of those statuses has kind of a privileged end and kind of a marginalized end and a whole lot of space in between. And I'm going to admit that on every one of those categories, I'm closer to the privileged end than the marginalized one. And it is also true, I strongly suspect, that most of the people in this room, most of the people who come to this church, most of the people who are connected to this church, on most of those things, are closer to the privileged end than the marginalized end. And that's part of why it's so important that we are welcoming, that we are hospitable. Earlier this week, I was at the referral center. I was doing some tech support because as a pastor, that is, the calling. And Michelle was nice enough to introduce me to a couple of board members who happened to be there. Carolyn and Kathy, this is Pastor Chris. Pastor Chris, this is Carolyn and Kathy. And we talked for a couple of minutes about this and that and the other thing. And as they wandered off to go back to whatever they were doing, a man came up to me. I don't know for certain, but I think he was volunteering there. Maybe not. I'm not sure. And he said, "Did I hear right that you're a pastor?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm the pastor at First Congregational United Church of Christ. That's the church across the street from the school." And he said, "I'm a Christian too." And my pastor brain thought, oh no, this is going to be a thing, isn't it? And it was. He asked a couple of questions about me and a couple of questions about the church, and I answered them deftly. It's not like I haven't been asked these before. And then he asked, "Did I hear right that you performed one of those homosexual weddings. And I said, yeah. Even though I personally haven't, and there hasn't been one here since I've been the pastor, I would totally do one. So yeah. And then the questions started coming. There's this thing called the Gish Gallop. It's a little rhetorical device. How it works is I'm arguing with you, and I just start throwing questions and statements at you, and they might not be good questions, and they might not be correct statements, but it takes you longer to respond to each of them than it takes me to ask them, and so it becomes exhausting for you, even though I'm just firing shots. And he was kind of doing that with Scripture. And I answered a couple of them and then said, I'd be happy to have this conversation with you, but I actually have another appointment that I have to get to. And I did. I had an appointment that had been on my calendar for a long time to be at Fieldstone for their volunteer luncheon. And I had an appointment that had just appeared on my calendar to not be in this conversation. But as I started walking away, something not so great rose up inside of me. And I said, I just want you to notice that when you told me you were a Christian, I didn't start an argument with you. Think about that. And he told me that I'm a false teacher. For a pastor, that comes with a lot of stuff. Because that doesn't just mean I disagree with you. It doesn't even just mean you're wrong. It means you are a danger to yourself and others. It means that every time I stand up here, I am leading you to the gates of hell. And I don't think I am. And it hurt. But I walked away. I'm not telling you that story to say anything about the referral center or people who volunteer there, or if he was a client or a guest, of the people who are clients and guests there. I'm not telling you that story so that you think that I'm a hero, and I'm not telling you that story so that you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you that story because I had 3 miserable minutes. And afterwards, I had to sit in my car for a moment. And later, I had to process it with Mariah. And even later, I thought about it throughout the week. And now, it's a sermon illustration. Do you have any idea how traumatic something has to be to become a sermon illustration? I had 3 miserable minutes. And I'm on the privileged end of the spectrum. And I can't imagine what that would have been like if it hadn't just been 3 miserable minutes that I pay every 6 or 7 years. I can't imagine what that would have been like if that had just been what Tuesday was, or what every day was. I can't imagine what it would be like if that's what it was to walk into any establishment with my partner, or to go anywhere dressed in the clothes that I like to wear, or to go anywhere with the skin that I have. And I know there are some people in this room who probably know what that is like, at least a little bit. But again, on most of these things, most of us are towards the privileged end. It is important for us to be open and affirming. It is important for us to be welcoming. Because at this party, there are people who will not walk in themselves, but will stand in the doorway and tell other people that they are not welcome. They'll do that as individuals. They'll do that as groups. They'll do that as churches. When people look at churches, they expect to not be welcomed. They expect that their family and friends will not be welcomed. And they expect that if they are welcomed, they are in a very special group of very important people, the kind of people who deserve welcome, unlike those people over there. But that's not God's reign of love. That's not how this works. That's not who God is, and that is not who we are. And it is so desperately important that we are welcoming, that we are open, that we are affirming, that we are standing at the door to this party saying, come in, calling out to people, come in, saying no matter who you are and no matter where you are on life's journey, come in. Because this party, this reign of love, it might be the most important thing ever. It might be the one place in a broken world where some people can feel at home, where some people can feel like they are loved and worthy of love. And I could end the sermon there, but that seems like it would be a downer ending. So let me go on. The beauty of this church, one of the most amazing things about this congregation, one of the most powerful things about y'all. Let me back up. Michael Kinnaman, who used to be like the general secretary of the National Council of Churches, was once asked why denominations exist. And he said, every denomination exists to preach some part of the gospel that if it weren't for them would be in danger of falling away, of being forgotten. Something like that is true of every congregation. I don't think any of us are in a position where we can live out the gospel in its entirety, where we can embody the gospel in its entirety. We are practicing Christians. We don't have it down yet. One of the things that we are so good at embodying is welcome, is hospitality. Not for a select few, not for the first wave of, not just for a select few, and not just for the first wave of newcomers, but for everyone. For everyone. For the person who that guy at the referral center would not welcome, and for that guy at the referral center. Everyone is welcome here. Because everyone is welcome to God's reign of love. And we don't want anyone to forget that, because we want everyone to have the blessings that we enjoy. That is, at least a little bit, what it is to be human. To invite others in to the party that we got into because God was so welcoming. So let's be human. Let's bless the world, and let's thank God for that welcome.